Yeah.
And then the shape of man. Let's say at the beginning of Genesis, when God creates heaven and earth, it says, uh, God created heaven and earth. The earth was chaos and void, and the Spirit of God was above the waters. And so you have this idea of spirit, and spirit is wind or breath. It's all the same
Breath.
word.
Yes, that's also important to say.
Yeah,
When it says the word spirit, it means wind. It also means breath,
yeah,
because breath is wind.
right.
There's no difference
Yeah,
between the
it's not a
two.
like what you said in the last video. It's not a metaphor. Breath is wind. Breath is actually wind. And so,
And the only difference, which is important, that's another example of a word that we have to sort of redefine. The word spirit, breath, soul, all those words, they refer to the breath. It means breath. And it right away, if you understand that, you can see the relationship with heaven. And in the story, it says God formed Adam from the dust of the earth
yeah,
and blew into his nostrils the breath of life. So right there, you can see that it's all about joining heaven and earth.
yeah,
So the breath comes from heaven, and he raises some earth, and then that's man.
yeah. And
So
what you
man
said.
is made from that union.
And it's exactly when you talk about the mediator, then it shows exactly that man is the mediator, because in the beginning these two things are completely separate. You have heaven and spirit and breath and wind above, and then you have this chaotic formless earth at the bottom, and those two things don't, let's say, they don't touch each other. They're separate. And then there's the creation of the different strats of creation, the heavens, and then the grass, and then it comes closer and closer and closer until you reach the human being, and then the human being has the heaven enter into the earth and joins with the earth, so that quite explicitly in the story, man is that
Is a
union,
microcosm
is
of
a
heaven and earth. Yeah.
microcosm of heaven and earth, but also the mediator, because he
Yeah.
joins them together. He's not just a representation of that separation, but actually a representation of that union. And then within man, there's another microcosm, which is the separation of man and woman, which represents again heaven and earth, which are separated, man being heaven and woman being earth, but then united at the same time. So like, and then that keeps, it's like these microcosms keep embedding themselves into each other to create this fractal structure that we're talking about. And the Bible is just full of those fractal like structures.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say something about also, again, the concept of breath. Maybe just talk a little bit about that, because it's also important to understand the connection. If you want to think in that way, where the breath is related to the mind, the breath is related to the intellect. That's something we don't really see things like that anymore, but it's a pretty obvious thing, actually, that your breath and your intellect are related. Because if you stop breathing, I mean, I wouldn't recommend this, but stop breathing for 20 minutes, you lose consciousness. Yeah,
Less than 20 minutes, I would
yeah, I know,
think.
but I was making sure.
Making
So
sure that you're unconscious.
yeah, so there's a clear connection between breath
And
and
consciousness.
consciousness and intellect and things of that
Yeah,
of that
I
nature.
mean, you remember when we were kids, people would play that game where they would choke someone. That's a bad game, but people would like choke someone until they actually passed out. It was like a very disturbing game that people played. But there's
Yeah,
also,
so the idea, I was just wanted to say that the idea is there is an obvious connection between heaven, air, wind, breath, intellect that we don't necessarily see anymore. But when you read the Bible, you have to understand these connections in order to understand most of the stories in the Bible.
yeah, and also one of the connections between breath and intellect is through the idea of word or logos,
Speaking,
because
yeah,
yeah, because speaking is the manifestation of intellect, and speaking is, words are pushed by this breath, and so the
breath.
breath pushes out the sounds, and so there's an obvious relationship between the manifestation of intellect and breath. And you see that in the story of Genesis itself, again, when God speaks in order to separate the things of the world. God speaks and so you have to kind of almost see this image of this breath that is above of above the earth, and then it becomes the vehicle for God's intellect to manifest itself and create the world.
And importantly, the first words that come out of God's mouth are, let there be light. Okay? So it says the breath of God, or the Spirit of God, or the wind of God hovered over the waters, and then God said, with that breath, let there be light. So the light is, in ancient cosmology, is meaning.
Yeah.
It represents the intellect, the meaning, the principle, the idea. So that which gives meaning to other things, that which defines things. It's the logos. It's the word. It's reason. It's logic. It's things of that nature.
Yeah.